Barnhart and
Barnhart and into River Run where we've been going 30 and 35 down through there, and then they'll go out the back of that barn on Shears Road, and they'll go out the front, and we'll all meet at the church at the time of Christmas. Back in Davidson and Sprint down to Texas Concord and all that.
Yeah.
I want to see where you're at.
Yeah, push hard.
No, this is coming today. I went to the business park and just ran it up for about an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
My cloud is starting to
Thursday morning,
dissipate,
that's
and I'm
what's
coming
surprising.
down.
We ride Thursday mornings at 5:30.
It was fun. It was great.
And we do lose.
Oh, good. That's all you do.
Thank you. Thank you
And then
so
Saturday,
much. Thank all y'all who
Saturday,
came.
Sunday.
Right.
It was fun for me.
And then we're running and swimming. We just got back home.
Yeah, Loops in the business and stuff. Construction, there's always junk in the road. I was riding around.
Pretty good, but yeah, once in a while there's a spot. You're like, oh, the first lap is always a little cautious.
Yeah, what's out here? So there are cones in the road today.
We got our own handouts.
Hey, everybody, just letting you know we'll be live in about 1 minute.
It's exciting.
Hey, I was going to add.
Okay.
It's a section of road that goes from Huntersville Concord to Raymond Church. There's pieces of it done.
Yeah, it's been gated off here and there. Yeah.
That's talked about a bypass.
Really.
And that really gets people
No,
way out.
No.
And it's shorter, so more people use it. But I got to check.
Yeah, it's
The status of that Farrell County, that connection between
Okay, everybody, we are live now. It's 6 o'clock.
More people not here than here.
Then you get stuff down, and you're really getting all the metro line traffic. It is part of the system that's critical. Yes, it finally connects. I know we're talking about this stepping closer, but that's like a big one. Thank you. I live here.
That's all they said.
So I know today
I guess it's all piecemeal.
So is it 6 o'clock?
They're piece.
Hello. I'm here for the meeting. Hello, it's 6 o'clock. I call the meeting to order, please. Just have your seats, and there's some good handouts. If you don't have any, raise them and they'll be delivered. Let me get my act together. Roll call. Nate Bowman. Here. Gatewood Campbell, I believe she's online. Supposed to be. Doug Ferguson.
Here.
Good. Sean Flynn.
Here.
John Foster.
Here.
Barbara Gethart.
Here.
Charles Ginyard.
Yes, ma'am.
Lee Haldeman.
Here.
Janelle Harris.
Here.
Elaine Kearns. Is Elaine
Phone.
on phone?
She might be, she hasn't confirmed yet.
Okay, I'll put a question. Bob Lemon. Sarah McCauley here. Elizabeth Rodriguez. Not here. Is she on the phone? Okay. Thank you. Cindy Tillman. Cindy?
Cindy confirmed she's on the phone.
She is?
Yes.
Thank you. And Jessica Tucker?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. April Dunn. Kathy Jones.
Here.
John McLean.
Here on the phone.
Diane McLean. Here. Okay. John O'Neill.
Here.
Yes, thank you. Mike Russell, not here. Stephen Swank. I believe John is not here yet. Okay. The agenda is before you, and we need to add, should we add it as the last thing?
Our understanding is at the end of the discussion on the composite,
Right.
then you would talk about the pause. So it would be, what is it, item 8?
8. Oh, in final presentation. After,
Before
okay.
next steps.
we need to have a motion to discuss, delay the board's actions to delay the meetings.
I'll make a motion to discuss the action the board has asked us to take.
Okay,
Second.
and I'll put that as, number 9A. All right, also, so that will be amended agenda. And, is there any other items to go on the agenda? I will tell you that if you plan on making a motion, it should be on the agenda tonight. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Second? All in favor, in discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Okay. Now for the, item 4, approval of the June 9th, minutes. The minutes need to be, revised to reflect that the motions that I ruled that passed, the town attorney has ruled that they did not pass, and that should be noted after the pass. And then,
I'm sorry, other way around. In the minutes, it indicates that they failed. We need to reflect that they did pass.
is that, okay, sorry. Got nervous about it tonight. Okay, so would somebody make
I'll make
that?
a motion that we approve the minutes for the June 9th meeting as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Okay. The next item is my remarks, and I just want to say that we have had indications that some of the town board members may come, and that was the item number 9A that we added to discuss the board's action to delay for us not to meet again until September. All right. Are there any, has anyone signed up to speak? All right, then Dave Hill, number 7.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quick remarks. As most of you already know, we are going to take a pause in the project. And when we first put the agenda together, I think we were thinking, I was thinking I was going to say something different than I'm going to say now. What I think is important to note now is we have reached a point where the composite being recommended by the consultant team is going to be shown tonight. And in some ways, it's an appropriate kind of drop point. This is kind of the first effort to try to start synthesizing all of these complex details from different organizing principles, different alternative futures. So Terry and Larry will walk us through what that product is going to be. And as of tonight, this will kind of be the stopping point. We'll take a pause and we'll try to figure out where we go from here. And I don't think anybody really knows exactly what's going to happen in the next couple of months. But from this point forward, it is kind of a good stopping point. And at least while we start thinking about what is going to happen in July and August, you're going to be able to at least have something to look at and be able to evaluate and see what you think about it. The intent was never to, I think that the term final alternative future is a misnomer. It is really trying to say we're now trying to merge, have a hybrid, have a composite, whatever you want to call it, and start to put things together, but it by no stretch of the imagination would limit the committee's review and continued comment on what the elements would be in there. So you would have, you know, if you take the time over the next couple of months to look at the product tonight, and then you go back to the alternative futures, you'll be able to compare and see what you think and start to be able to decide what you like and what you don't like. Other than that, I think we're just going to have to wait, and I do think that there are going to be some things that the committee will be asked to do by the town board during the pause. I guess that's what we're going to call it. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is 8, the presentation. Larry?
Hello, guys, everyone, and Larry's going to come up and do this in a minute. Let me just tag on to what Dave was saying. I wasn't, of course, at the workshop. I had a exposure illness, so I did not want to come and put anybody at risk. Everybody appreciate that. So Larry's going to take you through that composite plan. But a couple of things I want to say, because remember going back to the last time we talked about a time past, we talked about the idea of this, and the analogy I made was like Mr. Potato Head. Okay, that is essentially, when we look at these composite views, is what we're doing. There's a lot of good feedback came in from that public workshop. A lot of different perceptions from a lot of people shared, and our team, and I've chimed in with Larry and Alex about this, to look at and try to discern what information we were getting out of that. But one thing about alternative futures, I want to make this clear, like Dave was saying, the alternative futures, it's not the master plan. It's like a lot of football fans, I'll bet in the room. Well, it's kind of hard the way the Panthers have been playing recently, the last few years, to be a football fan, but you got college teams. I'm sure everybody in here has seen at one point in time somebody stand up on a screen and diagram a play, right? X's and O's, they call it, basketball, football. And it's a diagram, an abstraction of what you're going to do. Is it a pass play? Is it a running play? Are we going to punt? That's what the alternative futures gives us as urban designers. It lets us deal with this from the citizenry, one of their main representatives, from staff, and from the electeds to say, okay, now as we get into running those plays, the master planning, what is going to be our playbook? And that is essentially what I want you to think about in terms of these alternative futures. We think what we're going to show you tonight is a balanced view of the feedback that we got from the public workshop. But again, it's a good time to take that break so you can look at it, think about what you've heard, what you saw, and factor it into it. So when we do engage, hopefully, things will start to come back together for everyone. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larry to take you through an analysis of this, again, through the filter of the organizing principles. We've said all along we had an agreement about organizing principles. That has been our filter at every stage. So he's going to take you to a point-by-point review of this composite plan as filtered through, as seen through, as analyzed through the organizing principles. So Larry?
Thanks, Terry. I'd like to let everybody know that the handouts we gave shows an overall composite plan of the alternative future. And then following that are each of the organizing principles in greater detail. I'm not going to go through all of those, but please use those as a reference as we discuss tonight and look at these layers here. What I'm going to do is highlight with each one of these organizing principles how they have been integrated into the alternative future, the composite alternative future. And again, as Dave and Terry mentioned, this is a first draft at a composite synthesis of these items. So there's still some malleability, certainly, in the plan. And we're going to go through this and then open it up for a conversation. So with that said, this is that composite alternative future. And what it includes are a number of elements from each one of the low, medium, and high alternative futures. As we look at nature, as you know, a lot of these alternative futures, 1, 2, and 3, had a number of consistent themes with them. And nature was one that I think extended across all three. In particular, our approach to the greenways and maximizing the preservation of those existing greenways and understanding that those become the sources of the watershed basins, Catawba River and the Yakimpedia River. So our embrace of that is certainly apparent and keen in our composite alternative future. What is nuanced about this is our, I want to say, a more robust approach to looking at some regional stormwater opportunities. So this is something that we're still in the process of evaluating in terms of what that might mean in lessening some of the burdens for private development in the future, what it might mean for public-private partnerships. But it's something that we would like to see advance as part of the thinking for that composite alternative future. Another key element here that is unique for this composite alternative future is our approach to and our thinking about the connectivity in your downtown core with a greenway, a more urban greenway that connects your downtown greenway and some other greenways on the east side. We see this as a wonderful opportunity to bridge some gaps that exist right now. There's a lot of efforts I know underway to enhance some of these gateways into these greenway spaces, but we really truly see an opportunity that's afforded by the alternative futures to bridge that gap and look at those urban spaces. Again, here's some imagery. Again, as we go through this pause period, I would certainly recommend adding to these images. I know we've gone through a number of image preference surveys, but keep your own library as a group and build upon this in terms of what you think are key images that represent each of these organizing principles. So obviously with the downtown greenway, some of the attitudes about how nature and tree canopies interact with street sections and sidewalks, and your approach to integrating public walkways and bicycle ways through the natural landscape as well as a more urban context. And again, looking at some of these creative ways for integration of stormwater facilities. Now, soil was an interesting thing for us to look at and embrace, and what you see here is sort of a layered approach. And we wanted to really look at that core block area that exists here downtown, the commercial block and the several blocks around there. In the alternative future one, we were really looking at the street frontage here in front of Town Hall and the block on the opposite side of the street. And I think we really wanted to expand that idea about soul and embracing some more of the historic elements that are a part of downtown Huntersville, and how that might begin to overlap some of the other amenities, such as open spaces or other activities that are going on. So you see in that darker magenta area sort of an expanded version of the alternative future 2 for our idea about the capturing and the core area of the soul. What we also see is another tier, if you will, of extension of that soul. We wanted to extend that to reach and touch upon some of these projects that are underway right now or in current planning stages, and also extend it along Gilead Road to really extend that soul as part of that gateway from the interstate and really draw some attention along that frontage to your downtown core. And part of that is really an understanding that we have in talking with you and doing our own inventory. What are those, at least from a building standpoint, what are those key artifacts that are contributors, major contributors to your soul? Of course, your Main Street, it's a wonderful Main Street. You got these old historic buildings, which really begins to capture some of the essence and activity that happened here in Huntersville. But you also have some contemporary elements, the town hall or the town center building and the activities that are happening there, as well as you have some benchmark residential buildings here that I think really need to be showcased and understood as major factors contributing to that soul. Those are some of the X factors that we see looking at your community. And then, of course, at the Hunter House, some of the activities there, and I think there's just some richness there in terms of what that might contribute to your soul. So in terms of our thinking about that, these are all elements that factor into our thinking for soul in your downtown. And in many ways, it's I guess a continuing thread for gathering. Following that same footprint, we really want to focus our gathering on that soul area, on those 4 or 5 blocks that surround your downtown core, and focus any improvements that would be necessary to enhance that gathering. As you recall, in our organizing principles, we're trying to provide gathering for one or several thousand people. And how do we establish that and embrace some of the open spaces and other areas and sidewalk areas within your downtown core? But we think that's also important to look beyond those core block areas and expand that, and again, reach out to other elements and amenities within the town of Huntersville. Again, touching upon some of the adjacent projects and extending that along Gilead Road. And again, typically we look at, walkability, and you talk about the quarter-mile radius. What this expanded gathering represents is plus or minus that quarter-mile, 5-minute walk. So in terms of that gathering, we're trying to utilize that as sort of the measuring stick for how people would gather. And within those zones there are so many opportunities for different types of gathering to occur. And that's something that we'd like to explore once we get beyond this framework plan and into the master plan to really begin to design and define those different open space typologies. And again, you see some of the images, of course, Veterans Park, large open space that can accommodate, several 100,000 people or so. But then you have a range of scale of spaces, potentially, with some well-defined public urban rooms. And then you have the open spaces that are happening now along some of the frontages of your very nice bungalow homes that have been converted into commercial establishments. And then number 4, you see there's opportunity for those smaller pocket parks, those areas of solitude where 1 or 2 people can kind of get off the main sidewalk and have a conversation or perhaps relax in the environment. So again, as we get into the design of the master plan, we're looking for opportunities to provide these different types of spaces. Civic was key, and this is something that I know there was some discussion about, how do we discern how people were reflecting upon locations of the town hall versus the arts and cultural center versus library, because I know we had different locations within each one of the alternative futures 1 through 3. In our mind, I think that's something we'd still like to preserve the option for all those locations. So although you see it in that composite plan right now, I think we still, at least in our minds, are open to the notion that the town hall, the arts and cultural center, and the library could be located. We do think, we agree, that the town hall should be within the, several blocks of your downtown core right now. But ultimately where that location is, I think that's something that we'd like to hear some more feedback and dialogue with the committee. In terms of the other civic components, certainly your existing churches and the programs that they have are vital and important to your downtown, and the fact that they all touch upon that quarter-mile radius, that's key and unique. They're incredible pieces of architecture as well as the spaces and activities that they have. So that's an amazing component that you have, an amazing asset of your downtown. Other civic pieces are certainly, I'll just kind of mention this as we're looking through these images, is your Huntersville Elementary School. I think you received earlier this week our first iteration of conceptual plans for the location of that. And just to give an update, not to go back into that report you received, but we did look at siting that school, a new school, based upon some prototypes that we received from CMS that are more urban in their approach in terms of its frontage on the streets and its approach to embracing neighborhoods. And the interesting thing too is that they are really much in favor, and I know this is part of some of the regulations in place, of accommodating some of the student drop operations internally on their site, which we see as an opportunity obviously to release the burden on Sherwood Road or Drive, as well as some of the other perimeter streets. So what you see here are 2 options out of the study that we had. We did broach with CMS the thought about an east-west connector, just to get an idea of what their reaction, what their feedback might be. They do not endorse any particular one. They do lean toward the one that runs on the southern route, but they cannot fully endorse any route until they have a better understanding of how their program is going to fit on that site while keeping their existing operations going on at the same time. So that's going to require some more study. But what you see is 2 prototypes. One is based upon an Ardrey Kell 3-story school. There's a 3-story classroom wing on one side and a 1-story component on the other. There's also another academy that's underdeveloped right now. It's the Bruns Academy. And the one thing that was interesting to us about that is it integrates this gymnasium, that is a shared gymnasium between the students and also open on off hours for Parks and Rec and the general public. And it's a prototype that they're working on right now. So we see that as an excellent opportunity, given particularly the location next to Holbrook Park, and embracing and again its outreach and urban approach to the community. Living was certainly an important organizing principle for all of us. And as we looked at our approach to that, we wanted to take, again, a closer look at that layered approach. And I think we wanted to really think about the scale and the transition between the existing neighborhoods in your downtown core. So with that, we're really leaning on that alternative future one in terms of how we make those connections from the existing neighborhoods as we approach your downtown core. Now, in defining that downtown core, you see in that the darker orange color, we really wanted to embrace those 5 blocks or so for that opportunity for your mixed-use typology. And we see that with the residential above the retail, or a combination of office with residential above, but really to synchronize that with your core walkable downtown area there. And then look at appropriate building typology that modulates that building height and scale and intensity toward something that is more integrated and blended with the existing residential around it. So in your composite plan, you'll see, and I know it's hard to read at the 11 by 17, and we'll have some digital files for you to look at over this interim here. But as you look at those color codings, we're not saying in these bubbles that entire area is cleared and these building typologies are put in. We're saying in these areas, there's an opportunity for these types of residential buildings and lots to be integrated. So the other thing that we would like to do as we get into the master plan is help you define what those typologies are. Because I think with multifamily in particular, people have this idea it's a 300 unit development with parking that goes along with that. But there's also multifamily that's, a 4-unit or an 8-unit building that looks no different than a large single-family home. So those are some of the typologies and nuances that we like to get into based upon the realities of the lot geometries that you have around your downtown. So again, with the living, our approach is that we really want to have that higher intensity situated in your downtown core. That's not to say it's going to be all that, but those are where we would like to encourage those typologies and then have that transition as you go away. And you also see some highlights there. We wanted to highlight the living opportunities at each of your gateway areas. You see there coming off the interstate, there's an opportunity there for some unique housing that can take advantage of its proximity to your BRT station in the future. That's within almost striking distance, that quarter-mile radius. So that's walkability that's going to happen with any residential there. And it might be folks that could take advantage of that and use that for their everyday work life. And then certainly at your gateway areas there, we like to get into, as we get into the master planning, is look at some appropriate housing typologies at those nodes there to really begin to define and signify your entrance into the town of Huntersville. And again, these are just some images. I think you've seen a lot of these before in a visuals preference survey. We're not saying that these are the images or the buildings that would only be allowed in this area here, and this is something, a library that we would build upon together with you as we get deeper into the process. Finally, on mobility, this one, we took an approach where we're looking at providing as much connectivity as possible in your downtown. And it seemed to us that a blend between Alternative Futures 2 and 3 offered the best opportunity to provide you with more connectivity. And what you see here is highlighted in red, obviously, is your north-south with your Main Street and NC 115 and your Gilead Road. Those are right now currently your main arteries through your downtown. And with the east-west connector, and I know there's been a lot of discussion on that, we see the opportunity there, and we agree, at least on our side right now, that perhaps a better alignment is to the south. It gives CMS more flexibility and opportunity to look at their school siting and thinking about how that program might work. But it also gives us an ability to provide some easy cross north-south street connections to, again, add to that connectivity in your grid network, particularly along Gilead Road. Now, the other thing about this is we're showing that connection to 2nd Street. And I know this has been a source of discussion too, as with that initial alternative future 3, we were suggesting a crossing, an at-grade crossing of the Norfolk Southern Railroad. And we're not saying that that would happen all at once. And it might not be something that happens until 10, 15, 20 years from now. But in terms of our planning and how we think about east-west connectors or connections in your downtown, it seems to us that we wouldn't want to foreclose that opportunity if it did arise in your future. So we have a big TBD on there just to say that that's something that needs more study. And that's sort of the blend right now between the alternative futures 2 and 3, that perhaps in the short term, the short term being 10, 15, 20 years, perhaps there's an east-west connector that stops there at Main Street. But as things evolve over time, there's that opportunity to have that connection. If we don't think about that in the long term and we say, okay, well, that if there's an east-west connection that happens between Main Street and NC 115, and not thinking about that potential 2nd Street connection, you may have an offset there that would foreclose that opportunity in the future. So that's, as we look at the planning for that area, we're not saying that, the east-west connector has to go all the way through to Huntersville, Concord Road. We're just making some logical alignments to allow for that to happen perhaps in the future. The other thing about this, with that east-west connector, through our traffic analysis, it's our understanding that that is going to alleviate some of the burdens, the level of service there at your intersection of Gilead Road, Huntersville, Concord Road, and your cross streets there at 115, Maxwell, and Main Street. And to us, that is appealing because it gives you an opportunity for more walkability and connections in your downtown core. You are eliminating or giving alternate routes for traffic that calms that area there and makes it more inviting. And it gives you the ability to rather increase more lanes, use that real estate for more pedestrian activities, more sidewalk space, perhaps some on-street parking. And part of this analysis here is to, and the traffic analysis was prepared, the intent was to share with NCDOT some of the traffic counts with each one of these scenarios and get an understanding from them what might be feasible and what we can do to really enhance and push some policies in terms of how we'd like to see walkability and streetscapes and design in your downtown core. And these are just, again, some images showing obviously the intersection right out the door here. And again, I think we're all in agreement. We're looking for creating those pedestrian-oriented sidewalks and opportunities there. And the widths of a lot of these, are just not possible with the frontages that we have along the primary streets as you would see commercial development right now. So how do we begin to gain that real estate back? And I think it's going to be a balance of looking at some creative street networks. And of course, we still want to keep on the forefront some ideas about mobility beyond, the bus rapid transit and other transit systems, and look at some of these things. Again, as mentioned before, Terry's mentioned this many times with Wilson, the pilot project up there, and their rideshare, their microtransit. Is that something that can happen here in the short term, which might begin to offer some suggestions about how streets are designed and where some different projects might be implemented in that regard. We also wanted to show a scenic street type. I know that there was some discussion about that. We listened to the last steering committee meeting that took place the other week, And I think, you know, as we get into the master plan, we can begin to look at what some of these unique street typologies look like. And here's just one expression right now, but scenic street that is really integrated well into the landscape. It has a very dynamic cross-section in terms of its programming. You can see it's a dedicated bike lane, traffic lane, on-street parking, as well as some sidewalks. And it's something that's in a school zone. So again, that's just one. Obviously, we look at other street typologies. The Maxwell Avenue, that is something that's very appealing to us, not our idea. I know it's something that the town and other consultants have looked at in the past to create that as a VUNR for, you know, a living street, a shared space. I think that's, you know, getting back to the soul. There's a lot of crossover with that one. That's something that's unique to your downtown that you don't see many other towns, that opportunity to have this thread that kind of connects north and south through your commercial core there. With that, I'll open it for
Okay.
discussions.
Do we have, committee members online?
Yes, ma'am, we do. In addition to the two acknowledged, we also have Gatewood Campbell, Stephen Swannick, and Marlene Hearns.
Okay.
All on.
So do they indicate, the three of them, that they wish to make a comment at this time?
It's possible we're having a technical issue with the phone. So
Okay. We'll come back to them.
Thank you.
All right. Does anybody, one of the committee members have comments, want to make a statement or comment, ask questions? All right, hearing none, then we'll move forward. Did anybody have second thoughts? Then we're moving forward, thank you. Next item on the agenda is, was for us to discuss the final future. I want to thank you for the presentations, the work that's been done. I thank you for the everyone plans that presented the maps. I could not pull it up and print it myself on my computer. It is a big thing. Huntersville is a big place, so it deserves a big map and big document. It will be interesting and fun to go back over everything that you've done, and I do appreciate it. Now, does anybody have any comment or questions? Then hearing none, we're going to move on.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I want to ask clarification on one thing y'all said. Talking about the east-west new road on the outskirts of our neighborhood. And which road did you say that CMS was leaning towards?
They lean toward the southern alignment, as
Can-
represented on this.
Can you educated folks get us back to that map?
I'm sorry?
We're all educated, I didn't mean that word.
I'm sorry.
Mobility.
Are you clicking it?
I am, I'm sorry. We're fighting the clicker.
She's got the clicker fight.
Okay.
That works.
If you had something that had much more detail.
The 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Here we go.
There we go. What are you calling southern? I mean, I know what southern is, but it's north, I mean, it's the top end of this, correct?
It's the 1A and 1B. The more southern alignment,
Road alignment, not school.
yes.
Yeah, rather than run it by the greenway, they pull it out to the street.
So the Carolina blue on that is the new building?
Yes, sir.
The dotted stuff is the existing building?
The
Some of the existing building?
The dotted red line represents the circulation pattern within the parking area.
Where is the existing buildings?
There's a portion of the existing building that's dashed in black along Gilead Road. That was a consideration perhaps to reutilize that as one option being a public library or something else. If CMS was so inclined to consider selling a portion of their building, they would not donated or anything of that nature.
You're saying none of these show the existing buildings only?
Correct. This would be a full build-out scenario. Obviously, there would be some phasing involved with this. The idea is that the school would be constructed while the existing school is in operation, and then elements of the site would be open and constructed. during
What
that
is the
transition.
dark pink building at the end of the Carolina Blue horseshoe?
That was an idea of a freestanding gymnasium structure. This is something programmatically that CMS has done with some other
Is there anything
projects.
strong in the building to drink?
No.
They're gonna tear down the existing structure of the gymnasium.
That would be another opportunity. That's a great
You don't
idea.
show it on the map.
That's a great idea. We're taking it.
There are 4 maps up there, do not show the existing gymnasium that's there.
Can I say something here quick? I think all of the orange in here indicates the existing school facilities. And when we talked with CMS, I don't think that number one, they said there will not be another school. Okay, and you can take that with a grain of salt. But the other thing that they did say was that when it comes time to be able to look at what happens to the existing school, the only thing that they're bound to is fair market value as a school entity. But it does not prevent the town of Huntersville from being able to enter into a public-private partnership in order to see some other use. And then at that point, that's when you would say, are you going to demolish the structures or are you going to try to reuse them?
The southern road, Charles just showed me this. My glasses aren't as good as yours. The southern road that y'all are showing on the top 1A, the orange that's south of the southern road as it goes across the main site there, all that is where the existing, not counting the modulars, is that where all the existing structure is?
Yes, sir.
So they're talking about everything that would be built in the perceived day is the Carolina blue and the dark pink, and the 2 dotted things, they're implying to us that they're gonna keep all the traffic on site like we've made charter schools do.
We haven't gone to that full line of study. The intent is that they would do a double queue stacking within that parking area.
Double, 2,
Yes, sir. That's what they're doing in other schools in their system at this time.
I'm not gonna get into the parking thing because I ain't gonna get there yet. So the southern alignment in 1A implies that everything that they would build new is back in the ball fields at 7. And the existing structures, not counting the modulars, the gym, the cafeteria, and all that, the new structures that were built 18 years ago are all in the orange.
That's correct. But what we are showing in that
So I
data.
hope I don't live 20 more years, I won't forget this.
Yes.
I think what, Charles, you want to say the gym, that,
No, I want to say the entire daggum structure.
okay.
If they're gonna build, forgive me, I'm not interrupting you, Nate, it is not just the gym. I didn't understand the orange till Sean showed me this. I mean, I see orange, but I didn't understand that's what that is.
As an initial concept, the idea was, could we preserve that building along the frontage of Gilead Road as a way to introduce quickly a new program, a civic program, along Gilead Road. In this instance, it was a library. And there's precedent for that. There's an old shopping center in south end of Charlotte. It's a 1-story structure, 2-story height, and they did a very nice renovation of that and turned it into a community library. We're looking for opportunities, and we're not saying that, that's something that CMS has embraced. We're just saying, hey, there's an opportunity to salvage a portion of the school. And I understand where you're going. Is there an opportunity to salvage all of it or a greater portion of it?
Charles, that answer your question? Because again, the thing is, they intend to put a new school, everything, as you said, above that proposed road, including their movements in terms of everything. That leaves that existing school in the orange area for a discussion that may involve, acquisition by the town of Huntersville, acquisition by others as they dispose property. So it really does inure to the benefit of the town of Huntersville. They're not planning on using a hybrid model where they use part of that and they then have the other part up there. They're going to build a new school. They have prototypes, and they have I used to do a lot of schoolwork, I mentioned that, and they have very rigid rules that they have about bus circulation, about circulation of kids being dropped off and kids being picked up. They have a requirement for a new modular field. It's really, I've always found it funny, you design a new school, and you always assume you're going to not build enough of a school. It's really interesting. But they have that where they have to have a modular field close by. They have very precise requirements. And this, as for a planning study, and this is a planning study, not done by them, but by us, represents the information that we know they want to see as much as we can at this time. That's what it shows.
Part of that, the nuance that we're getting into working with staff is, this is a civic building typology, and there's specific requirements about a civic building in terms of its frontage, its approach to the community. So we're trying to look at ways to integrate their prototype to meet those requirements. Having a nice frontage along perhaps a new public park, along Sherwood, and looking at where those building entrances are. So there's going to be, as they get into deeper studies, and again, every prototype is malleable, but this is one that they felt it was appropriate to start the study with. As we got into the discussion, as you see in that upper right corner there with 1A, that's another school, Bruns Academy, where they were looking at integrating that shared gymnasium within that structure. You can see it's a little bit more compact and offers some opportunities. But this is part of the dialogue in this early planning stage that we initiated with CMS. Yes, sir.
But the simplified answer is, Charles, and I think that make it easy. Everything in that orange with the current building, if the town of Huntersville, or if a developer wanted to buy it at market value, you can have it.
That's correct.
Bottom line.
Right. We're just showing that as an opportunity, and that, to be, I guess, clear, that orange extends beyond the area of the school building itself. To the
Say that again?
The area that we're showing in orange, that doesn't capture, it extends beyond the actual building footprint, because you see it goes off to the left, to the west there. That's just more property area. And again, as we look at that east-west connector, does that begin to offer up some opportunities to have some appropriate development that fronts along that roadway and can take advantage of that, a great open space. And again, these are just ideas as we think about the positioning of that east-west connector. Is that something that, again, as we think about planning, we can establish that alignment to allow for that to occur. It might just be more open space, which would be fantastic as well.
But bottom line, they're not married to that building or to that land once they build a new school. If somebody wants to pay them market value for it.
That's something that they would discuss.
So is CMS a definite on building a new school? Because they haven't got approved for the bond yet, correct? Or are they, in the future, are they? Or is that just up in the air?
They've got a new bond that's coming out for 2023. I don't know where Huntersville fits within that. I don't think they've disclosed a full list of projects that are in there.
Well, when we talk to CMS, I think right now Huntersville is middle of the pack, all right? So, and that means we face competition, no question about it. But when the question was asked, if we were to try to enter into a public-private partnership, because there's also the issue of regional stormwater involved in this property. So there's a lot of win-wins in here, and so the question would be, when asked, CMS said that if we were to work something out that would provide some advantages for them, then there would be an opportunity to move up competitively on the ranking list. And it was not, I think so, it was definitely you can move up.
I was just, Charles, you were on the town board. Didn't the town contribute to the shared gymnasium?
It took me 19 months
Yeah.
to beg Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system to take a $500,000 check from us. 19 months to beg them. And then they brag in their school meetings how wonderful this idea is. We're now doing it county-wide. So I'll never forget it.
So the point is, if the new plan, if at least, forget about the road frontage, the gym is relatively new. So if they're gonna tear everything down and sell it, the town seems like, well, we'll buy the gym for what the land value is. We wanna keep the gym, and that could be a town asset. I clearly think the town, since they put $500,000 in it, should have some bargaining chips in terms of at least the gym.
Does that mean that the proposed road would not be built until this new school is built or on their agenda, because you're going through their property?
That's correct.
So you can't, okay.
That's correct.
And
And there'd
they
be
have
some,
not-
I'm sorry?
They have not given any projection of when they think, whether this is 5, 10, 20 years out,
No, ma'am.
the new school.
I haven't read it mentioned at all about Huntersville. I've read about other schools in Charlotte, but not.
As Dave mentioned, where it's ranked, it's in the middle of the pack right now, the full list. I guess there's some,
30 years from now.
At least.
And they could do the school with, could they build the school without the road?
yes, sir.
Oh, sure.
Independent.
Yes, sir.
Well, of course.
They take out more of that stormwater.
Yes, sir.
We're building the road for them.
The school has to front the street.
Yeah.
So that would be Sherwood. If the road's not built, it would be Sherwood. I mean, that's the
You can't go
question.
any further than 115. I mean, traffic backs up with that now, so what's the difference?
So would the town have to buy the property that they put the road on from CMS? Or could that be part of the deal to work out, like Nick said, like with the gym and stuff? Could there be something worked out there?
I would think so. That's something that,
I think that's a perfect bargaining chip. I also think that if there's a possibility of getting Mecklenburg County Stormwater involved with some of their funding, I mean, there's a lot of different players that if you get them all working together, it might minimize the kind of cash outlay that the town would have to look at. But when we get into implementation, the one thing that I've seen used in a lot of different places, because I've heard a lot of discussions about, this is going to cost a lot, and yeah, some of these are big ticket items, but there are ways to evaluate and use what is known as a return on investment model, and it's pretty simple, and it gives you an idea of whether it's a sound investment on the part of the taxpayers, and you start to look at, are you reaping some benefits from all of these activities that you're trying to undertake. But having a public-private partnership, this is a perfect example of where that would work.
One more thing on 180. Am I to understand that the other light blue to the left of the big dotted stuff, is that stormwater?
Yeah.
And then am I to believe that therefore it goes over, under, around the dotted green, which I'm going to assume is the greenway that they're constructing now, and goes back towards 21?
Yeah.
Well, a third of the water on that school property comes through my front yard. The third of the stormwater always has come through my front yard. So I don't see any water going the natural way virtually across the dark pink, I'm going to call it the new gym for the conversation. That water there does not go west. that water comes
Goes north.
under the greenway, through my neighbor's yard, under Nottingham, because when a 10-inch water main was struck in that school property, it drowned my front yard. Not that it matters, because there's plenty of trees there, until the town wants to take down more of them. So I don't think that is personally got the stormwater going in the direction that nature's taking it now. All of it, not some of it.
Well, the positioning of that blue area there immediately to the west of the parking area, that is a natural bowl right now. To your point, it perhaps doesn't capture all the fall of the CMS.
Well, there's no perhaps, it doesn't.
But that's a level of engineering and, design that certainly be looked at as beyond this initial concept.
Charles, they'd have to design it,
design the flow.
the whole site to go to that stormwater area, and then it has to be large enough to be detained in a weather event, so it doesn't, in other words, it's going to be a giant hole, and it only fills up when it rains, and then it slowly is let out, so they can detain the water and treat the water. But whether they can do that, and that pond's big enough for the school site, or additional sites, would take a lot of engineering.
Thank you.
Quick question on Maxwell. So you said on Maxwell that you're going, at the development of Maxwell, did you guys propose anything about pedestrian only, like we had talked about previously? Or what was the plan for Maxwell itself? You had said something, but I just want to clarify.
Sure.
Is it as a focus area, or what's the?
We see that as an incredible street type, and we agree with the Wooner concept, and perhaps that extends through that commercial block initially. There might be a block or two to the north that it continues, but whether it's fully pedestrian only or if it's a shared space, that's a level of detail that we haven't gotten into, and that's something that we would like to work together with you as we get into the master planning. But in terms of our thinking, we do think that, and we've experienced it and seen it in our walkabouts, that is a pedestrian-friendly street as it is right now, notwithstanding some of the improvements that are necessary, but we think we can build upon that and create something that's very unique, that sets you apart from Davidson or Belmont, that you have this wonderful pedestrian-forward street that taps into these great commercial assets that you have, the soul of your downtown core, and then you can have access to other streets and amenities that are sprung from that.
So how does traffic flow then if you make that pedestrian only, or at least part of it, right, or depending upon the level of pedestrian only, how is traffic flow going to be affected for parking and for basically entrances into the businesses on Main Street and entrances to the businesses where Charles' property is on Maxwell, right there, that parking lot? I guess from a traffic flow perspective, since we're talking about that, that's kind of a concern because that gives the overall flow of downtown its kind of premise, right? So that's kind of my concern as far as if we're focusing on these core areas and these core blocks, the determination of that will really make the flow of downtown what it is. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
So that's kind of my concern. Obviously, I don't think all of that's been addressed in this.
That's the next one. That's the
Yeah.
next master plan.
Okay. What's your opinion on that?
Well, my opinion is that making your street network more robust in other areas takes the pressure off of Maxwell. If you do not add more connectivity, there's going to be more of a demand for utilization of that for vehicles. And the more you can disperse traffic and allow for other means to get through your downtown, it gives you more flexibility to do, I think, some more creative things that I think you have in mind.
Well, and the on-street parking, of course, is a huge issue on Main Street. And as a matter of fact, it's at its breaking point right now.
Yeah.
You know, I have a business on Main Street, and even with the existing parking that we have, that's going to be taken away, it's going to hinder business flow there. My concern too is if we turn that to pedestrian only, we don't have an alternative for people to get around that corridor, we're gonna have a problem with access. You know, and that's gonna become an issue for retail tenants, right? I think everybody on this committee is pro bringing businesses into the downtown area and making them flourish. But we really have the forethought in order to do that. And I'd like to see kind of more going forward after this committee is paused, more on that aspect particularly, because if we're looking to develop this area, we really need to know those key dynamics. And flow is one of them particularly.
You're exactly right. And again, that's sort of why we define that gathering area. I think that gathering area, that core area, those 4 or 5 blocks, because they all impact each other. It's not just, you know, that commercial block, it's what's happening in the block across the street as well. So I think we need to get that right, and not lose that, because that is the core, the soul, the gathering, and all these other great things that are happening in downtown right now.
And what we do now sets the precedence for that in the future. So,
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
About this historic building that is by the school, it says it's the setting of a historic building, then it says resetting. What exactly does that mean?
I'm not sure.
So on the 1A, 1B, you have they have this big red star
yes,
on
yes.
the green part by the AG building.
Yes, that's the old agricultural building. And
Yeah. So it says right here, number 3, proposed neighborhood park and setting, and then it says resetting of the historic agricultural building. What does that mean, resetting?
giving it a new presentation, because right now it's sort of surrounded by parking and some of the circulation that happens to the school. So we'd like to see that reset, almost like with an intentional park in front of it, where we could actually use something creative to demonstrate some of the activities that happened there in the past. Maybe there's some educational things in terms of farming or things of that nature. By resetting it, we're saying we're trying to give it a more appropriate setting versus the setting that it has right now.
Right, just enhancing the environment around it. What's the big red star for?
I'm sorry?
What's the big red star for?
That's just a graphic to represent, something that's special.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
My understanding is that the old school building, I was always told by the Holbrooks, my wife's family, that if the building goes, the land reverts to them. That's a Holbrook issue. That's why it's still sitting there and the school hasn't done anything with it.
It's a nice shot of it, Val.
Yeah, I'll give it to you, but if you tear it down, I'm getting the land back.
Well, that may be true, because Mr. Holbrooks owned a lot of land. As a matter of fact, where I live and all the surrounding is a subdivision from 1939, or earlier in the 30s.
I think I've never researched it.
I'll send you a map. That would be interesting.
They used to plow or handy.
Yeah, right.
But that was a big daddy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but-
He's not a nice man.
So all that property along in there, back in the 30s, was owned by the Holbrook family and the Knox family. A little history lesson.
I think that's why the school's still there. The school, I don't know why CMS wouldn't have taken it out years ago when they built the school.
Yeah. Okay.
The road the additional road that would potentially cross the school, where the school sits now, is the plan to sort of add considerations or recommendations around what that sort of the character of that road is, or the things like tree lined or things like that? Is that
Absolutely.
part of this?
Absolutely. We look at those cross sections and program with that. Is it a median divided, with an array of trees, the trees in the center, on the side, how that engages public open spaces, whether it's natural or you might have some park spaces. But we see that as a very landscape forward street section there, and a low impact as much as possible. But to your question, yes, that's something that we'll look at as we get into the master plan. These different street typologies, and the scenic street, if we want to call it that, would certainly be one, because it is an important one as part of this discussion.
And again, how we go back to this, I keep going back to it, the organizing principles, go back and read those. We take that as our orders. So when we look at, coming back to the master plan phase, how those things are designed, we'll look at all of these organizing principles and say, here's our orders. All of us, here's what we need to do. And then we'll debate whether or not we achieved them or not, or whether we can't achieve them at a 10 level, or it's going to be at a 3 level. Everything involves, in life, in real life, involves compromise, involves, discussion. So, but we will take those things very seriously when we look at the implementation part of these things during master plan.
On the east-west connector a little bit, I guess. So I did look at the traffic report, and I got a few questions. I don't know. Sorry, Terry, if you want to handle them or not. But if we don't get the railroad crossing for 2nd Street, according to does the traffic report still support the east-west connector as far as moving traffic?
Ask our traffic engineer.
Well, I'm Lance Hartland. I'm with Gannett Fleming.
Lance.
Our firm prepared the traffic study, and to answer your question, it does provide a benefit, but not as much of a benefit if it did have the crossing.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
There is still benefit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Go ahead.
So, as I see this traffic study, it's not intended to support or not support any one road improvement. It's just to say, if we go here, here's what you could expect. So if it doesn't cross, if this new road doesn't cross to 2nd Street, there is an improvement at the intersection of Gilead and Huntersville Concord. It goes from an F to an E. Okay, and that is, by our current code, an acceptable level of service, a level of service E in a downtown setting. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to be there. So again, this report is simply stating, if we do these things, here's what you can expect at these intersections, level of service at the intersections. And that in turn provides us information to talk to NCDOT about, road connectivity elsewhere and the impacts on that property. So I just want to be sure that this traffic study doesn't necessarily support anything. It just tells us what the intersections.
Yeah, I saw the proposed options, and I got some questions on those. I guess, could we have expanded the variables on here to say, what if we put a stop sign at Hillcrest? What if we put speed tables along Gilead Road? What if we expanded the scope of this to look outside just the downtown to say, the study supports that this is pretty much through traffic we're talking about, right? 80, 90% is going through town. So what if we expanded the scope and said, let's really look where these cars are coming from, where they're going to, and see if there's some other way to keep them out of downtown rather than getting them into downtown and spreading them out?
I think the original scope was set up to really focus on the corridor of Gilead and what we can do as an alternative, potential alternative to NCDOT widening that to 4 lanes. So that was part of the discussion, and as part of, as the traffic continues to grow, that impact on Gilead Road is going to increase. So that was the original discussion in terms of providing more connectivity, in addition to trying to alleviate your downtown core.
Okay, well, the connectivity piece I agree with. The traffic relief still, you need to look at the source. Where is it coming from? Where is it going to? If we shouldn't just focus on Gilead Road, we should try to help solve the overall traffic problem of east to west at the foot of the lake, right? We need to look outside that a little bit, if we could say. And it's coming, because if most of the traffic's coming off 77 or coming across from Rosedale, and now we're going to say you can't turn left on 21. You have to wait, go to Commerce Street, turn left there, then you can go north on 21. Or you can turn right on 21, go down and take maybe a U-turn, which nobody will do, and then proceed north. And so seems like with that, we're exacerbating the problem already. Either, all these people are going out McCord, they're going out Huntersville Concord to get in their new developments. And we're saying, okay, we're taking that left turn option away from you. And we all know when you roll off 77 from the south, the hardest thing to do is turn left on 21. There's usually traffic spread out all across that intersection at rush hour. So now we're saying, go to Commerce, turn left, or go on into downtown, and we've made the problem worse. So if we're getting out ahead of it, I guess we should go ahead and admit it. But seems like we need to broaden our scope to say maybe you get off at Hambright, maybe you get off at 18 and take Mount Holly Huntersville and look at some other cut-throughs to go to Asbury Chapel or something like that, or out Bureau. I don't think we're looking wide enough. I think we're just yielding to the Mobius loop of more people, more cars, more asphalt. I had some other questions.
Next question.
So the level of service thing you mentioned, Jack, where'd you go? So that F is for 2 hours a day, weekday?
It's the peak hour.
The peak hours. And for some reason, they're 4 hours a day. Most rush hours are an hour, but ours in this study seem to be 7 to 9 and 4 to 6, right?
That's typical. That's how we usually look at the peak hour.
So other than that, we're an E or even better, right?
Better.
I mean,
It's
yeah.
better than E.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I mean,
Yeah.
I can ride a bike straight
Right,
across Gilead all the
exactly,
time. I drive my lawnmower across it. So, yeah, it's no big deal. So we're trying to fix basically a temporary problem where if you look at 2 hours out of a 24-hour day, we're trying to fix a problem that exists 10% of the time. On page 9, you can tell me how you did the study. On page 9, we seem to be doing, it was page 9 on mine, but the time of the study, they had 13 studied, only 4 of them used 2022 data, 6 of them used 2015, and 3 of them used 2017. So what we're talking about is a massive extrapolation, I guess, on data that's 7, 8, 9 years old. And I made this suggestion in an email. I know nobody read it, but do you guys do time over distance studies with some of the more modern tools of picking up cell phone signals and tracking them from one intersection to another?
That is fairly new technology that I don't think DOT has really truly embraced at the moment. So we tried to utilize the NCDOT guidelines in doing a traffic study, and that's what we modeled. That's the approach we took.
You explained that you didn't use current data because of the construction going on at that one ambulance.
Correct, and that's why we had to use the 2015 volumes, because we couldn't get the accurate existing counts at those intersections.
Two points I'd like to make it on the planning side of this, though, Lance, because you first make a good point about the more expansively you can look at traffic, there's no doubt that it's better. And I'm the one that made the point that there's going to be all kinds of development, to the east, and everybody's going to be fighting and making a decision if they have to get to a regional artery, being 85 or 77. Everybody's going to be calculating in their head, which one do I go to, right? And then once I make that decision, which pathway do I take to get to that? So granted, I think, so there's always more study is better. You're in the business of doing those things. I don't think you argue with that point. But the question is this, I would posit, is this necessarily only a town of Huntersville, but an MTC type study for northern Mecklenburg? I mean, I would posit that these are things that are very relevant, need to be discussed. That's the first thing. Second thing is, let me expound on what Lance said.
Quickly. Tomorrow is the deadline for statements of qualifications for firms interested in doing a town-wide mobility plan. The intent would have been, if it weren't for the delay in the availability of federal funding, we wanted to try to do them both at downtown and in the mobility plan at the same time. But the funding for the mobility plan is not available until July 1st.
The other part of this, and I'm always one trying to embrace new tools too, but keep in mind, we started this, again, with the idea, as Lance mentioned, about trying to find ways so you don't become a victim of NCDOT and what they could very well do to Gilead. And that I guess it's like a gladiatorial fight. You know, someone's setting the rules, right? And in this case, it's NCDOT. So if we're going to make rational arguments to try to find other ways from having them do something unilaterally, we have to stick to the tools they use. I mean, that's what we've been told, that's what we believe. Now, alternative, anecdotal information is sure, and you could probably bring it in, but I'm not, it's a gain reward in that world. And I have to trust, and do trust, traffic engineers. Many of you work with NCDOT, and some of you have come out of that environment. There for that standpoint. But keep in mind, the whole thing about this too, and I've said it from the beginning, if someone wants to boldly take over Gilead Road and Old Statesville Road for big portions of it and have it not conform to those things, that's always the option. That's a big step. From a financial standpoint, it doesn't solve the problem you're talking about. It shifts it more than to a regional argument and discussion perhaps, but those are always options. So I wanted to say that. I felt like it's important to say that because we as your planner and Lance and Gannett Fleming as traffic consultants, and none of these options we're putting forth that we have a vested interest in seeing any one done over another. We're trying to put forth options with the best tools and the best methodology that we know has gravity within the firmament that we're all within to achieve the kinds of outcomes that the town of Huntersville makes a decision to pursue. That's it.
So Bob, basically what you're saying is if we don't offer alternatives to Gilead, NCDOT will say we have an obligation to provide east-west connectivity and we're putting a 4-lane road to the middle of your town. That could be the scenario.
Could be, if you don't just take it over and take them out of the equation, which is a bigger, bold move than anything else. Like I said, I was part of that with the city of Charlotte on South Boulevard. The city of Charlotte is a huge resource, and we had a lot of wind at our back, and we were able to do that back in 1998 or something, whatever that occurred, 99.
Nate?
Can I say something to that? No, in defense of DOT, I can remember probably 12 or 15 years ago when exit 25 was being redeveloped and redesigned. Everybody had heart attacks after heart attacks because of no left turns and the new setup and everything else. Probably when that new interchange opened, probably for the first 3 months or the first 6 months, there was lots of hiccups. But it's probably one of the best operating interchanges in our area today. I'm still convinced, using commerce in the way that they plan on doing this, there are probably lots of thought went into it. If we give it time, it'll be the same way that exit 25 was. The best. Pardon me?
The clutter?
Yes, yes.
And interchange, I just want to make sure.
Right, and I think we'll have the same thing there at Gilead Road. First of all, we just got to let it play out and let it work and everything else. Left turn is a nightmare. So, but what they're planning, I think in time, when we look back 3 years after it's been opened, we'll forget it ever was the other way.
Nate?
To Lee's point, traffic from east that wants to get to the interstate. Waiting on the 2nd Street crossing, that's going to take a while. The two things that can happen, I mentioned it last time, is the roundabout at Stumptown Road that we put in, the Stumptown Road extension. That'll get people who really don't want to go through downtown, want to get over towards the interstate and go north, they'll go there. The second one is at Walter Street, which is the new Church Street extension. Of course, it's sending all the traffic in front of my house. That's fine with me. Send it all the way down to Holbrook Road, and eventually it should go down to Hembright without even going over 115. Those are two doable projects while you're waiting on, this other east-west connector.
Yeah.
And if you want to go through town and go to the business, you go in the middle. You want to go north, you go to Stumptown Road extension. You want to go south, which obviously for many people are always exiting already on Holbrook Road. because there's like 4 exits out there. But the main traffic can cut, Jack will know how to cut through Vermillion, is you cut at Walter Street, I mean, eventually, but you get on Walter Street, which will skip the railroad tracks, get you right down, Church Street, and go down to Holbrook, and cut over, but eventually she'll take you down Handbright, and on the interstate.
Okay.
Those are 2 doable.
The Stumptown business was modeled, right? Yeah, so Stumptown is modeled in their numbers in here.
And also the Mount Holly, Huntersville.
Mount Holly, Huntersville.
North roundabout, we're talking about a different.
The southern roundabout
Southern
as well.
roundabout, yeah, it kind of terminus there, so it doesn't change a whole lot.
Right.
I got you. I had a couple other things, sorry, Sarah. And then the volume mix, I guess, so this is something you gotta observe, right? You know that half of our traffic downtown is through, well, more than half is through traffic, but half of it at least is commercial. And half of that, again, is probably more than 2 axles. So when you're talking queue lanes and things like that, you gotta consider the difference between a 60-foot tractor trailer truck and a 12-foot Prius, so.
That's been factored in the analysis.
Okay, you've got the mix that
Yes.
was in place in 2015. Okay, all right. I'll
Any other
reserve
comments
the
or
rest of my
questions
time.
from
I
anybody?
think an additional road is the
Yes.
Farrelltown Road that connects Huntersville, Concord, and Raymond Church would be a big enhancement to get people coming in from Huntersville,
Like
Concord.
Asbury Chapel
No,
Road?
just in Huntersville,
Yeah.
just coming in Huntersville, Concord
Farrelltown.
Road, being able to cut through
Metro
Farrell.
Line would take all the trucks down Farrelltown.
Yeah.
They hate coming through town. You give them better access to 85 or 77,
Yeah.
especially 85.
Highway 75.
You get into Raymond Church.
Farrelltown Parkway, which is where the Lennar project is, and it goes by Vermillion and heads south. That's gonna take a lot more money though. But yeah, you get Metro Line, those guys, they don't want to drive through town.
Yeah.
You give them better options interstate.
Yeah.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
yeah.
I want to ditto or put quotes underneath what John Foster said about,
Square.
the Sanford and 21. I certainly also want to say ditto to what Nate said. But I will say, when I came home from college half a century ago and found out that we had property from Sunset Road to what would now be the Quick Trip and Cashins at Catawba Avenue at 21. If I could make a wish on traffic, other than making 77 10 lanes wide and no toll roads, there is room right away to pave 21 from Sunset clear to the Catawba Avenue. That would give people an alternative to this intersection. I don't care if you make Gilly Road 6 lanes wide from Sarah's house to this intersection. It's going to fail right here. They dump all the traffic off of 77 onto 115. They dump all the traffic off of 45 onto 115 when it should be dumped on 21. Now, I can't fix that.
That's like north and south though, right? We talking about east
Yeah,
and west?
north-south.
North-south. The north-south impedes this intersection just as much as the Gilead Road stuff does. They have the possibility, and we've talked about it for 30 years. We're in North Mecklenburg. They don't.
Anybody else?
I have a question.
All right.
I just don't know if I'm understanding the analysis correctly, but when you were talking about, there's a section on page 15 of the report that says in scenarios 3 and 5, approximately 40% of the traffic on Gilead was assigned to use the east-west road connector. So I'm just asking, am I understanding that correctly? That you think that the traffic that's currently on Gilead would then be going on that corridor that goes from school up to, or all the way to Sherwood, or am I misunderstanding?
That's correct. It was an approximate number that we looked at the overall capacity of Gilead and kind of shifted up some of the traffic, shifted up the traffic onto the east-west connector. So have more of a balanced.
So, I mean, and I just want to make sure I was understanding it correctly. So I guess that raises a concern for me, and maybe the design is where it gets fixed, is that that's a whole lot of traffic that would be next to apartment buildings where kids are running around. Ancient Sparrows facility, the Greenway. I keep reiterating, I guess the same concern is how do you design to make sure that this additional 40% of traffic isn't suddenly something that's unsafe for kids or people who are trying to enjoy that new green space area.
I think that's part of the master plan development, but I would envision that road to be a 2-lane, 25-mile-an-hour type cross-section.
And then still revise the same, alleviate the
East-west
same
connector.
traffic heaviness at that speed.
Excuse me?
I mean, it doesn't affect what you're expecting as far as alleviating.
No. Because it's a similar speed on Gilead. I mean, it's a slow speed.
May I add something to that?
40% of traffic, it was taking.
Right, I bet that's a
there
lot.
and seeing how the system will work. In reality, it may be 10%, it may be 15, it may be 20. If they took 40% off of Gilead onto that road, this is how the system would perform.
And I'm just trying to understand, and then is it designed then? Because again, that's just a concern that I have, that if design can take care of it, I understand, because obviously we do want to make sure that it's walkable and that it doesn't become a 4-lane.
Yes.
Really.
And let me talk about something. There's something about this in words. Words in our culture matter, and sometimes we give words more meaning than they deserve. Because I think we picked this up from the original planning documents, we kept it up and called it east-west connector. When you take that term, east-west connector, you probably would put it in the same bucket as the New Jersey Turnpike, the freeway from wherever, right? The truth is, what we're doing, and this is why we've even colored it differently, which it's at some point it would go to another color. Like every other street, it's another piece of an urban connected network. It's just one more option. So when we say, yeah, it would be a new street, it would have a 25-mile-per-hour design speed, unlike a lot of other streets that we're going to have to come in, hopefully you will over time, and retroactively improve to make them multimodal from cycling and from walking. This one would be like that out of the gate, because you get you're starting with a clean sheet of paper. So I think we probably ought to, over the next few months, find something other than the east-west connector, which sounds like something like Darth Vader or something, coming and swooping in, and doing something different than what we all intended to do. But thanks for that question, Jessica, because I think it's very important to make that distinction about what it is and what it isn't.
Just another thing on it, sorry. Just at least make sure you read the conclusions on 1D, because it's pretty simple, right? There's 3 bullet points. The I-7721 programmed roadway improvements are going to fix that. And the intersection of Commerce and 115, it'll be fixed to these acceptable levels. And just at our baseline, it says the 2-lane portion of Gilead Road is going to still be service level F during both peak hours if we do nothing and this doesn't without the east-west connector. So is there other things we can do to regulate the traffic coming down through that 2-lane road, like the additional light, like synchronization, the way it feeds coming across 21, that could actually allow it to be an E, and rather than let it run for a half a mile and then queue all up to go across? I mean, there are some other things, right? They do it great on Catawba Road East. I mean, people feed off of 77 there, and they go through that downtown. I don't know if that's a DOT road or not, but.
I mean, if you did an actual detailed corridor analysis, and I think there is potential, there may be potential minor things to be able to tweak level of service, but just the overall number of the volume on that road itself is creating the issue, as well as the north-south on 115. So those kind of meet together and have that poor level of service.
And it all comes to head out here, so unless we do something.
Right, and this is the bottleneck, this section right here is the bottleneck.
Not the fact that that's 2-lane or 4, it's the fact that that intersection is what it is. That's something we can't lose focus of, I think.
Right, yeah, this is the bottleneck,
Yeah,
this section
yeah,
right here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is discussion, Mayor Bales. We've also been joined by Commissioners Phillips and Kidwell. Mayor Bales, are you going to speak?
I am, I'm over here.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
I wanted to make sure that everybody could hear me. First of all, I just want to thank each and every one of you for all of the work that you have been doing. We greatly appreciate it. The board greatly appreciates it. And our town greatly appreciates it. So I've heard it said several times this evening, so I'm sure everyone is aware that we're going to be taking a pause. On Tuesday evening, the board voted in a 4-2 vote to have this committee take a breath, and in that time frame, and within about a week and a half?
Less than a week, because we already have the cost.
Okay, perfect. In about a week, less than a week, you are each going to get a survey in your inbox. And this was something that Commissioner Phillips and Commissioner Kidwell and the other board members felt very strongly about, that we wanted to hear from you. Wanted to hear what your thoughts were, what's going well, what isn't, what could we do different from a staff perspective, how can we make this process better to ensure that this committee gets an end product that you can be proud of. Then, once that all of that and data has been gathered, Commissioner Phillips and Commissioner Kidwell, along with staff, Jack, and I'm sure Brian and Dave, will sit down and really work through a plan through the month of August, and then they will present back to the board September the 6th on what that plan looks like. And then from there, hopefully we'll get you back in the saddle and ready to go. In the meantime, we are going to continue the community engagement, because we know that data, when you get back in the saddle, is going to be very important. So staff is going to continue to be out. I believe we're at Birkdale tomorrow night. Is that correct? We paused it, not knowing what would happen tonight, but we're confirmed for July. Okay, perfect. So they will continue the community engagement and making sure that all of that work that you've done, the surveys that citizens can log in and select their interests and what they'd like to see downtown, they'll continue to gather that so that you will have that data when you resume. And I did want to make sure that Commissioner Phillips and Kidwell were here as well, so that if you had questions, that collectively we could answer those.
Let me say, Commissioner Novak said, I did not mean to slight you. I did not recognize you. I apologize. Please, you have been here the whole evening, and thank you. I did not mean to slight you. Please accept my apology.
Are there any questions for us at this point? I would say you got a lot of information. I sat here tonight and I listened to your dialogue and the composite alternative, and it's the first time I've seen it. So I'm digesting it myself. So I'm sure while you're taking a pause, each and every one of you will be looking at this and formulating more questions, etc. So thank you all. Have a good night.
Any of the commissioners? Okay. Did you want to speak?
No, just I'll echo the mayor's statement and thank you for everything. Everything that you compile, all this data is going to go into, it's going to be reviewed and then in September start to back up. And as we said in the meeting last night, my days are already behind. Tuesday night. Come back with, clear objectives, with deliverables, with goes, no-goes, so we can really focus on a true, awesome plan that you guys are going to bring to the board. So thank you.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes, ma'am. And I would say when you guys get the survey, please be honest. Please don't think that you need to tell us what we want to hear. We need to hear the truth. so that this can be the absolute best product for our town, because I value all of you guys that are volunteering, giving your time, and we want to make sure that your sentiments are truly echoed. And if there are learning lessons, even staff, should Kelly, the board need to take away from this as well to make us a better partner and team player in this, please, please, please just tell us the truth. That's really important, and I hope that you guys actually enjoy getting to have a little bit of a summer break too.
Commissioner Novak, would you like to speak? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the next steps. Dave?
Nothing to add, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry?
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add, okay. And then the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in discussion, all in favor, aye.